Chapter 4. Every Chautauqua should have a list somewhere of valuable things to remember that can be kept in some safe place for times of future need and inspiration. Details. And now, while the others are still snoring away, wasting this beautiful morning sunlight, well, to sort of fill time, what I have here in my list of valuable things to take on your next motorcycle trip across the Dakotas. I've been awake since dawn. Chris is still sound asleep in the other bed. I started to roll over for more sleep, but heard a rooster crowing and then became aware we are on vacation and there is no point in sleeping. I can hear John right through the motel partition sawing wood in there. Unless it's Sylvia. No, that's too loud. Damn chainsaw it sounds like. I got so tired of forgetting things on trips like this, I made this up and stored in a file at home to check off when I'm ready to go. Most of the items are commonplace and need no comment. Some of them are peculiar to motorcycling and some need more comment. Some of them are just plain peculiar and need a lot of comment. The list is divided in 4 parts: clothing, personal stuff, cooking and camping gear, and motorcycle stuff. The first part, clothing, is simple. 2 changes of underwear, long underwear, 1 change of shirt and pants for each of us. I use the Army surplus fatigues. They're cheap, tough, and don't show dirt. I had an item called dress clothes at first, but John penciled tux after this item. I was just thinking of something you might want to wear outside of a filling station. 1 sweater and jacket each. Gloves. Unlined leather gloves are best because they prevent sunburn, absorb sweat, and keep your hands cool. When you're going for an hour or 2, little things like this aren't important, but when you're going all day long, a day after day, they become plenty important. Cycle boots, rain gear, helmet and sunshade, bubble. This gives me claustrophobia, so I use it only in the rain, which otherwise at high speed stings your face like needles. And goggles. I don't like windshields because they also close you in. These are some British laminated plate glass goggles that work fine. The wind gets behind sunglasses. Plastic goggles get scratched up and distort vision. The next list is personal stuff. Combs, billfold, pocket knife, memoranda booklet, pen, cigarettes and matches, flashlight, soap and plastic soap container, toothbrush and toothpaste, scissors, APCs for headache, insect repellent, deodorant. After a hot day on a cycle, your best friends don't need to tell you. Sunburn lotion. On a cycle, you don't notice sunburn until you stop, then it's too late. Put it on early. Band-aids, toilet paper, washcloth. This can go into a plastic box to keep other stuff from getting damp. Towel, and books. I don't know of any other cyclist who takes books with them. They take a lot of space, but I have 3 of them here anyway, with some loose sheets of paper in them for writing. These are the shop manual for the cycle, a general troubleshooting guide containing all the technical information I can never keep in my head. This is the Chilton's Motorcycle Troubleshooting Guide, written by O.C. Rich and sold by Sears and Roebuck. A copy of Thoreau's Walden, which Chris has never heard and which can be read 100 times without exhaustion. I try always to pick a book far over his head and read it as a basis for question and answer rather than without interruption. I read a sentence or 2, wait for him to come up with his usual barrage of questions, answer them, and read another sentence or 2. Classics read well this way. They must be written this way. Sometimes we have spent a whole evening reading and talking and discovered we've only covered 2 or 3 pages. It's a form of reading done a century ago when chautauquas were popular. Unless you've tried it, you can't imagine how pleasant it is to do it this very way. I see Chris is sleeping over there, completely relaxed. None of his normal tension. I guess I won't wake him up yet. Camping equipment includes 2 sleeping bags, 2 ponchos, and 1 ground cloth. These convert into a tent and also protect the luggage from rain while you're traveling. Rope, a U.S. Geodetic Survey map of the area where we hope to do some hiking, machete, compass, canteen. I couldn't find this anywhere when we left. I think the kids must have lost it somewhere. 2 Army surplus mess kits with knife and fork and spoon. A collapsible sterno stove with 1 medium-sized can of sterno. This is an experimental purchase. I haven't used it yet. When it rains or when you're above the timberline, firewood is a problem. Some aluminum screw-top tins for lard, salt, butter, flour, and sugar. A mountaineering supply house sold us those years ago. Brillo for cleaning, and 2 aluminum frame backpacks. Motorcycle stuff. A standard toolkit comes with a cycle and is stored under the seat. This is supplemented with the following: a large, adjustable, open-end wrench, a machinist's hammer, a cold chisel, a taper punch, a pair of tire irons, a tire patching kit, a can of molybdenum disulfide spray for the chain. This has tremendous penetrating ability into the inside of each roller where it really counts, and the lubricating superiority of the molybdenum disulfide is well known. Once it has dried off, however, it ought to be supplemented with a good old SA30 engine oil. Impact driver, a point file, feeler gauge, and test lamp. Spare parts include plugs, throttle, clutch, and brake cables, points, fuses, headlight and taillight bulbs, chain coupling link with keeper, cotter pin, baling wire, spare chain. This is just an old one that was about shot when I replaced it, enough to get to a cycle shop if the present one goes. And that's about it. No shoelaces. It would probably be normal about this time to wonder what sort of U-Haul trailer all this is in, but it's not as bulky really as it sounds. I'm afraid these other characters will sleep all day if I let them. The sky outside is sparkling and clear. It's a shame to waste a day like this. I go over finally and give Chris a shake. His eyes pop open, then he sits bolt upright, uncomprehending. Shower time, I say. I go outside. The air is invigorating. In fact, Christ, it is cold out. I pound on the Sutherland's door. Yep, comes John's sleepy voice to the door. Yep. It feels like autumn. The cycles are wet with dew. No rain today, but cold. It must be in the 40s. While waiting, I check the engine oil level and tires and bolts and chain tension. A little slack there, so I get out the toolkit and tighten it up. I'm really getting anxious to get going. I see that Chris dresses warmly and we're packed and on the road, and it's definitely cold. Within minutes, all the heat of the warm clothing is drained out by the wind, and I'm shivering with big shivers, bracing. It ought to warm up soon as the sun gets higher in the sky. About half an hour of this and we'll be in Allendale for breakfast. We should cover a lot of miles today on these straight roads. If it weren't so damn cold, this would be gorgeous riding. Low-angled dawn sun striking what looks almost like frost covering those fields, but I guess it's just dew, sparkling and kind of misty. Dawn shadows everywhere make it look less flat than yesterday. All to ourselves. Nobody's even up yet, it looks like. My watch says 6:30. The old glove above it looks like it's got frost on it, but I guess it's just residue from the soaking last night. Good old beat-up gloves. They are so stiff now from the cold I can hardly straighten my hand out. I talked yesterday about caring. I care about these moldy old riding gloves. I smile at them flying through the breeze beside me because they have been there for so many years and are so old and so tired and so rotten. There's something kind of humorous about them. They have become filled with oil and sweat and dirt and spattered bugs, and now when I set them down flat on a table, even when they're not cold, they won't stay flat. They've got a memory of their own. They cost only $3 and have been restitched so many times it's getting impossible to repair them. Yeah, I take a lot of time and pains to do it anyway because I can't imagine any new pair taking their place. That's impractical, but practicality isn't the whole thing with gloves or with anything else. The machine itself receives some of the same feelings. With over 27,000 miles on it, it's getting to be something of a high miler, an old-timer, although there are plenty of older ones running. But over the miles, and I think most cyclists will agree with this, you pick up certain feelings about an individual machine that are unique for that one individual machine and no other. A friend who owns a cycle of the same make, model, and even the same year brought it over for repair, and when I test drove it afterwards, it was hard to believe it had come from the same factory years ago. You could see that long ago it had settled into its own kind of feel and ride and sound, completely different from mine. No worse, but different. I suppose you could call that a personality. Each machine has its own unique personality, which probably could be defined as the intuitive sum total of everything you know and feel about it. This personality constantly changes, usually for the worse, but sometimes surprisingly for the better, and it's this personality that is the real object of motorcycle maintenance. The new ones start out as good-looking strangers, and depending on how they are treated, degenerate rapidly into bad-acting grouches or even cripples, or else turn into healthy, good-natured, long-lasting friends. This one, despite the murderous treatment it got at the hands of those alleged mechanics, seems to have recovered and has been requiring fewer and fewer repairs as time goes on. There it is, Ellendale, a water tower, a grove of trees, and buildings among them in the morning sunlight. I've just given in to the shivering, which has been almost continuous the whole trip. The watch says 7:15. A few minutes later, we park by some old brick buildings. I turn to John and Sylvia, who've pulled up behind us. "That was cold," I say. They just stare at me fish-eyed. "Bracing what?" I say. No answer. I wait until they are completely off, then see that John is trying to untie all their luggage. He's having trouble with the knot. He gives up and we all move toward the restaurant. I try again. I'm walking backwards in front of them toward the restaurant, feeling a little manic from the ride, wringing my hands and laughing. "Sylvia, speak to me." Not a smile. I guess they really were cold. They order breakfast without looking up. Breakfast ends and I say finally, "What's next?" John says slowly and deliberately, "We're not leaving here until it warms up." He has a sheriff at sundown tone in his voice, which I suppose makes it final. So John and Sylvia and Chris sit and stay warm in the lobby of the hotel adjoining the restaurant while I go out for a walk. I guess they're kind of mad at me for getting them up so early to ride through that kind of stuff. When you're stuck together like this, I figure small differences in temperament are bound to show up. I remember now that I think of it, I've never been cycling with them before 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon, although for me dawn and early morning is always the greatest time for riding. The town is clean and fresh, and unlike the one we woke up this morning, some people are on the street and are opening stores and saying good morning and talking and commenting about how cold it is. Two thermometers on the shady side of the street read 42 and 46 degrees. One in the sun reads 65 degrees. After a few blocks, the main street goes onto two hard, muddy tracks in a field, past the Quonset hut full of farm machinery and repair tools, and then ends in a field. A man standing in the field is looking at me suspiciously, wondering what I'm doing probably as I look into the Quonset hut. I return down the street, find a chilly bench, and stare at the motorcycle. Nothing to do. It was cold, all right, but not that cold. How do John and Sylvia ever get through Minnesota winters? I wonder. There's a kind of glaring inconsistency here that's almost too obvious to dwell on. If they can't stand physical discomfort and they can't stand technology, they've got a little compromising to do. They depend on technology and condemn it at the same time. I'm sure they know that, and that just contributes to their dislike of the whole situation. They're not presenting a logical thesis, they're just reporting how it is. But 3 farmers are coming into town now, rounding the corner in a brand new pickup truck. I'll bet with them it's just the other way around. They're going to show off that truck and their tractor and that new washing machine, and they'll have the tools to fix them, and if they go wrong, and know how to use the tools. They value technology, and they're the ones who need it least. If all technology stopped tomorrow, these people would know how to make out. It would be rough, but they'd survive. John and Sylvia and Chris and I would be dead in a week. This condemnation of technology is ingratitude. That's what it is. Blind alley, though. If someone's ungrateful and you tell him he's ungrateful, okay, you've called him a name, you haven't solved anything. Half an hour later, the thermometer by the hotel door reads 53 degrees. Inside the empty main dining room of the hotel, I find them looking restless. They seem by their expressions to be in a better mood, though, and John says optimistically, "I'm going to put on everything I own, and then we'll make it all right." He goes out to the cycles, and when he comes back says, "I sure hate to unpack all that stuff, but I don't want another ride like last one." He says it's freezing in the men's room, and since there's no one else in the dining room, he crosses behind a table back from where we were sitting, and I'm sitting at the table talking to Sylvia. Then I look over, and there's John, all decked out in full-length set of pale blue long underwear. He's smirking from ear to ear at how silly he looks. I stare at his glasses lying on the table for a moment. Then I say to Sylvia, "You know, just a moment ago we were sitting here talking to Clark Kent. See, there's his glasses, and now all of a sudden..." "Lois, do you suppose..." John howls, "Chicken Man!" He glides over the varnished lobby floor like a skater, does a handspring, then glides back. He raises one arm over his head, then he crouches as if starting for the sky. "I'm ready. Here I go." He shakes his head sadly. "Geez, I hate to bust through that nice ceiling, but my X-ray vision tells me somebody's in trouble." Chris is giggling. "We'll all be in trouble if you don't get some clothes on," Sylvia says. John laughs. "An exposer, eh? The Ellendale Revealer." He struts around some more, then begins to put his clothes on over the underwear. He says, oh no, they wouldn't do that. Chicken Man and the police have an understanding. They know who's on the side of the law and order and justice and decency and fair play for everyone." When we hit the highway again, it's still chilly, but not like it was. We pass through a number of towns, and gradually, almost imperceptibly, the sun warms up, and my feelings warm up with them. The tired feeling wears off completely, and the wind and the sun feel good now, making it real. It's happening just from the warming of the sun. The road and green prairie farmland and buffeting wind coming together, and soon it's nothing but beautiful warmth and wind and speed and sun down the empty road. The last chills of the morning are thawed by the warm air, wind and more sun and more smooth road. So green this summer and so fresh. There are white and gold daisies among the grass in front of an old wire fence, a meadow with some cows, and far in the distance a low rising of the land with something golden on it. Hard to know now what it is. No need to know. Where there's a slight rise in the road, the drone of the motor becomes heavier. We top the rise and a new spread of land before us. The road descends and the drone of the engine falls away again. Prairie, tranquil and detached. Later when we stop, Sylvia has tears in her eyes from the wind, and she stretches out her arms and says, "It's so beautiful. It's so empty." I show Chris how to spread his jacket on the ground and use an extra shirt for a pillow. He's not at all sleepy, but I tell him to lie down anyway. He'll need the rest. I open up my own jacket to soak up more heat. John gets his camera out. After a while he says, "This is the hardest stuff in the world to photograph. You need a 360-degree lens or something. You see it, and when you look down into the ground glass, it's just nothing. As soon as you put a border on it, it's gone." I say, "That's what you don't see in a car, I suppose." Sylvia says, "Once, when I was about 10, we stopped like this by the road, and I used half a roll of film taking pictures, and when the pictures came back, I cried. There wasn't anything there." "When are we going to get going?" Chris says. "What's your hurry?" I ask. "I just want to get going." "There's nothing up ahead that's any better than it is right here." He looks down silently with a frown. "Are we going to go camping tonight?" he asked. The Sutherlands look at me apprehensively. "Are we?" he repeats. "We'll see later," I say. "Why later?" "Because I don't know now." "Why don't you know now?" "Well, I just don't know why I just don't know." John shrugs that it's okay. "This isn't the best camping country," I say. "There's no cover and no water." But suddenly I add, "All right, tonight we'll camp out." We had talked about it before. So we moved down the empty road. I don't want to own these prairies, or photograph them, or change them, or even stop, or even keep going. We are just moving down the empty road.